So, welcome everyone to my presentation. Today, we will be discussing leveraging social media to build your brand and find community. All right, so we are going to take this in four parts. I am going to try to take up just about 30 minutes and then just leave time for Q&A so I can answer some of your questions. So we are going to start with an introduction, letting you know who I am and why you should listen to me about this. The why of personal branding and using social media, simple actionable steps to get started, and then four, just how to really build meaningful connections. All right. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Text Giving Summit. I'm super honored to be speaking here today. Today, my topic is leveraging social media to build your brand and find community. So we're going to go through four key points here. The first part is just an introduction to me, who I am, what I do, why you should take these tips from me. Then we're going to dive into, the why of building a personal brand and the benefits. And then some simple actionable steps to get started. And then finally, how to build meaningful connections. All right, so who am I? I am Deirra Footman. I'm a network engineer and consultant. I've been in the tech industry for about 10 years, and I've spent 6 of those years online in the tech community on Twitter. You may follow me. I'm at CCIE by 30. And in that 6 years, I started off just initially sharing my journey, sharing my experiences. And I really joined because I was seeking a community. Being a Black woman in tech can be lonely. If you're in any, marginalized group, you can often, you go in these rooms and you just don't see yourself represented. So I got started, one, because I have a love of writing and I combine that with my love of tech. And then two, I wanted to connect with people like me, other Black engineers, other uh, female engineers, and just really, be able to have that community that I was missing at work. So in February of, I believe, 2016, yep, I joined Twitter and just started tweeting stuff out, looking for people who looked like me, looking for other women, and connecting with them to share my experiences, ask questions when I was stumped on something technical, having people to be able to reach out to ask those questions, or as I like to call it back then, ask the stupid questions. Please know there are no stupid questions, but at the time I was overwhelmed with imposter syndrome and just really trying to find people I could connect with to help me through that. um, and in that 6 years since first starting my Twitter account, I have become a community leader in uh, on Twitter and also a little bit on Instagram, but I'm really super active on Twitter. Someone asked if I can see the chat, and yes, I can. All right. So let's get started with the why. I won't bore you too much with this because I think we've all heard and had beaten into our heads the importance of building a personal brand. But I really want to just drive home the benefits that I have seen over the past few years. So one, it was standing out as a techie. So for the first few years of being active on Twitter, give me 1 second. I got some background noise. All right, apologies for that. So the first benefit was standing out as a techie. So when I first started this, I had just left my first job and I was pretty much new to job searching. If you know a little bit about my story, I got my first job from an internship that eventually evolved into my first role, and I was there for 5 years. So I was new to job searching. I was just trying my best based on the little bit of tips that I had gotten, but it wasn't popping the way that I really wanted it to. So as I started to gain traction online for blogging and showing up and, just being a contributor to the community, it really helped me stand out to to recruiters, to companies. They're like, "Oh, this is really cool." One of the biggest things they highlighted was the fact that I just had such good communication skills. And if you've been in the tech industry for a little while, you may know that, not all techies are great at communicating. We are often, split up into silos depending on the organization you're in, and you kind of just talk to your team and you don't really, engage with anyone else. And over the years, the tech community has really shifted with an importance on communication. One, for documentation purposes, making sure you're documenting what you're building and you're able to share that with other teams as well as your teams. And then two, from an educational perspective, I've seen a real big shift in, not only are we building the things as engineers and developers and, analysts, but we're also being encouraged to not only educate our peers, but also educate our users. So being able to have tangible proof that you can show up and communicate, whether that be in a blog or on Twitter, just answering questions is, you get a lot of points for that. So that has been the number one benefit I've seen at just standing out as a techie. Two, it opens doors to new opportunities. Since being active online, particularly my platform of choice is Twitter, since being active there, I've had so many connections built at, you know, FANG organizations, big consulting companies. And, I was able to find my mentor, who actually is a technical leader at Cisco, by just showing up online, sharing my journey, and, engaging with the community. That has also led to job offers. The role that I previously had at 14 West, I landed because I had a blog. The hiring manager really liked what he saw. He really felt like I did a great job of presenting the information, and he knew that his team really needed someone who could communicate and also just show up and bridge the gap between the network engineering team and the rest of the department. Finally, connecting with your peers. As I mentioned, when I first started out, I was looking for community. I was very much alone in my work life. I was surrounded by mostly men, but not only that, not only was I the only woman, I was the youngest person on the team. So of course, all of that, just came with imposter syndrome, compounded on imposter syndrome. So it led me to really be afraid to ask questions. It led me to not really wanting to share my ideas. I would often share my ideas, like after the meeting to someone, and they're like, "Well, why didn't you say that during the call?" So I really wanted to overcome that, but I wanted to be able to, find a safe space to really share those challenges and seek advice. So Twitter was that for me. I was able to show up. I started talking about, some of the challenges I was facing, with imposter syndrome, some of the insecurities, sometimes feeling like, I didn't know enough. And I was blown away by how many people who I looked up to and thought, like, wow, you've been in the tech industry 20 years. Like, you're just this great person. And they're like, oh no, I still struggle with that. And here's how I combat it. So that's one thing. Another thing from a technical aspect is, as you're studying your technical path, certifications, whatever the case may be, you often run into, sometimes you hit a wall and you're just like, I'm not, like, no matter what I'm doing, this information is just not clicking. Being able to have that community of peers online for you to just throw up a question, hey, I'm struggling with routing right now. Is someone available to answer some questions I have? And because people are, they want to show up, they want to nurture young talent, they will answer you, slide in your DMs, whatever the case may be. So those are the the three benefits I have noticed since showing up online and building my brand. All right. So the number one thing I hear from people when they are hearing that they should build a brand or build a portfolio, they often just overthink it and think, well, I'm not trying to be a content creator. I'm not good at writing. I'm not good at this. They really try, they really just overcomplicate it. They look at it like it's this huge thing. And I'm just here to tell you, keep it simple. Don't worry about, if you don't want to be a content creator, you don't have to be. And I think that's the number one misconception when people hear building a brand and, sharing it on social media. People think you have to be some sort of influencer. If that's not your goal, that's perfectly fine. You can be successful at this without going the content creator or influencer route. So the number one tip I tell people, because this is often where there's some anxiety, people say, well, I don't want to build a blog. I don't want to do this. Start simple. Start on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great place to just share, what you're learning. You can say, on a weekly basis, here's 5 things I learned this week. You can write that in an article, post it to your LinkedIn. It's there where recruiters can find you. And now you're slowly building a portfolio of your work. Other options are also sites like Medium. And then if you do choose to start a blog, WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, all of those great sites have templates. Just pick one that looks appeasing to you. I say keep it simple. Have the content right there for people to look at, and then keep it moving. Don't spend too much time thinking, oh, I have to have colors, I have to have a logo. You don't have to have all that to get started. Just start out just sharing what you're learning, what you're studying. Study notes. That was how I started. I just started off sharing my study notes. I would read a certification guide, handwrite my notes, and then just type them up and post them. Quick, easy, and to the point. So next, I say, choose one social media platform. Which platform is the easiest for you to show up on? For some people, that's LinkedIn. They want to just keep it streamlined with what they are going to be using to apply for jobs. LinkedIn can serve as a great online portfolio. For some people, it's YouTube. Maybe you're great on video. Maybe you like, doing demos and showing people, how to build things, how to write code, stuff like that. Maybe it's Instagram. Maybe you want to just create cute like infographics really quickly to share. For me, it was Twitter. And the reason it was Twitter was because Twitter was something that didn't take too much preparation. I could tweet on my commute. I could tweet while I was waiting to pick my son up from school. It's just something I can do really quickly. I can add value and go. 3, focus on adding your unique perspective. The second thing I hear from people is, I'm not smart enough to share, to blog, to, answer people's questions online. Number one, you know more than you think you do. And number two, no one asked you to be an expert, just contribute. Focus on being an individual contributor. Focus on sharing your specific perspective on the topic. A lot of people will say that, you know, oh, somebody already wrote about this. Well, yes, but nobody has your perspective on the topic. Your perspective is going to be unique than someone else. My favorite analogy that I often hear is, you go down the bread aisle and there are 20 different brands of bread. It's all bread, but each specific vendor brings their own unique twist to it. So keep that in mind when you're sharing your content and showing up to add questions, to answer questions. 4, be transparent. Share your wins and your lessons. I don't like to say losses because every loss is just really a lesson. You've learned something from it, and write about that. I think often on social media, it can just be this really glamorous highlight reel, and people are turned off by that for a couple of reasons. One, it just, kind of reinforces that imposter syndrome. It makes them feel a little bit more insecure. Like, oh, well, if they're doing this, if they're passing these certifications, why can't I pass it? So, just really be transparent when you're struggling with something and don't be afraid to, one, not only ask for help, but also share what you learned once you overcame that struggle. And then finally, be your authentic self. When I first started off on social media, I was 100%, tech all the time. I didn't comment on anything else. And while I gained great traction, it wasn't until I started sharing my other interests outside of technology that I really, connected with more people. Um, I think a lot of people forget that, outside of tech, we're all human beings, we all have lives outside of this. Figure out, what you're comfortable, what parts of yourself beyond work are you comfortable with sharing. A lot of my peers online, they talk about they go on foodie adventures. Some people are into art and photography, and they share a little bit of that within, their tech related content. And it drives home relatability. It makes you appear more authentic. It shows you as a more well rounded person. 1 second. So this is my first time presenting with Canva. So, all right. So while I restart my presentation, does anyone have any questions about what I have stated so far? All right. Yes, definitely be your authentic self. All right, I'm going to share again. Chrome tab. Yes, ask your questions in the Q&A because they do get lost in the chat. All right, let's try this again. Present. Okay. So again, with building meaningful connections. So once you started showing up and you're sharing, what you're learning, again, number one, focusing on just building in public. Again, share what you're learning. You don't have to be an expert. It's perfectly okay to share your journey, your lessons learned as you're going along. I think a lot of people, again, get caught up in it has to be perfect. I have to be a senior, engineer. I have to be a senior, developer, et cetera, et cetera. No, you don't. um, you will attract a lot of people who are just in the stages of, I just got my certification. What do I do next? By you sharing, like, yep, I got my certification, and then I started my first help desk role. Here's what life is like on the help desk. Here's what I'm learning. All of that is great stuff to share. It does not have to be, you know, pretty. You can just share in like bullet points. Number two, engage with the community. If you're on a platform such as Twitter or Instagram, read and respond to the comments. Take the comments that you're getting frequently and turn that into an article or a thread on Twitter or whatever your platform may be. Maybe it's, well, how did you get started in tech? What did you use to study for the certification? Show up in your comments or in your Twitter replies and answer those questions. With that said, also ask questions to the people that you're following when they post their opinion or their blog post on something. Um, it can be as simple as, hey, I found this really interesting. Why did you take this perspective on it as opposed to, and then just throw out an opposing perspective. Another great thing to do is just show up and be encouraging, like, hey, thank you for this write up. This was really, clear and concise. For me, the way this is showing up is I am very interested in cybersecurity, and I am now looking to transition into network security. So one way I showed up was with the Log4j vulnerability that has been all over the news this week. And I'm just like, hey, is there anyone who can, explain this to me? And someone replied with an article they wrote. And I'm like, this is really great and concise. I'll share this out to people. People like answering questions, people like being helpful. So by you not only answering questions you get on your content, but also asking other techies and content creators questions about theirs, you build those relationships. Again, add value. As you're answering these questions, not only questions you get, but look at questions that people are leaving to other techies, other engineers, other content creators, and show up there and offer your perspective is one way. And then another way is to even, write a thread or a blog post on that particular question. And, is it something you struggled with? Is it something you were wondering too? Is it something you researched and you got differing opinions and, maybe you did a little bit more in-depth research on said opinions and here's what you found. Just showing up and adding value, the community will greatly appreciate you. There's a great quote that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And by showing up and adding value and your unique perspective, that's a great way to go far. Again, I'm going to reiterate this. Please be you. Show up, figure out what interests you want to tie into, your personal brand online and add that. So I have peers who are into, luxury and lifestyle stuff and they sprinkle that in with their tech content. I have peers who love to cook and they sprinkle that in with their tech content. I have peers who like to do like hiking and all of that type of stuff and they sprinkle that in. So I'm reiterating this again because it is so important. It is absolutely the secret sauce. Um, Figure out, and it doesn't have to be everything. A prime example for me is I am a mother, but I do not share. I limit what I share about my son online. One, for safety reasons, and two, it's just a boundary for me. You can, maybe you want to share like that you like to cook, but you don't want to share if you're into like the luxury lifestyle type stuff that you don't want to share that online. And that's perfectly okay. You don't have to share everything, but just pick one or two things, other aspects about yourself to just sprinkle in with your content online. And not only does that help you, be present yourself as a more well-rounded person, but also you can connect with other peers based off of those hobbies. All right, and that is all I have for slides. So I am going to do Q&A. Please use the Q&A box to drop your questions because they do get lost in the chat. All right, so the first question we have is, how do you suggest a student start a blog? So I would say pick the platform of your choice. If you want to be a little bit more creative and kind of own your data, I would say, use like WordPress or Wix or something like that. If you're just really, just trying to get started, Medium is a great place for that, as well as LinkedIn. And for student related content, I'd focus on, just to get started, you can just focus on what you're learning in your classes, how you overcame particular challenges with particular subjects. If you're doing any type of like internships, I'd like even write up like, hey, here's the day in the life of my internship at XYZ. So all of those are great small bites of content to get started with. I think the next question is there a blog template that you know of that can help a beginner new to blogging? Yep. So I used Wix, and the reason I used Wix was because they offer a wizard based on different templates, and you can just run that wizard and it'll, give you a nice clean layout, and then you can just update your pictures and stuff. I know WordPress has templates, but I found WordPress particularly challenging, and I just didn't want to invest enough time in it. I just wanted to kind of go and get started. So definitely Wix is a good one. I know Squarespace has a lot of good templates. I personally haven't used it, but I know it comes highly recommended. All right. Someone asked, could one use LinkedIn as a blog? By posting, I try to share myself as a resource. I like to share topics about what I do. Yeah, so LinkedIn is a great place to blog. It's probably the easiest because one, you're already on there to market yourself, connecting with companies and as well as your colleagues. So it's another great place. You can just make it a one-stop shop. So you have your experience and then you have your blog. Um, Articles I've posted on LinkedIn get like really great engagement. People share it. They can also share it outside of LinkedIn. So yes, LinkedIn is a great place to start. Okay. Oh, my questions disappeared. What's happening? All right, here we go. So someone asked, if you're switching into careers, how to leverage your current skills, non-technical, into tech. So I'd say it really depends on your skills, but most of the quote unquote non-technical skills do transfer. So a lot of stuff like customer service, um, communication, any type of documentation, any type of training, training background, teaching, all of that stuff transfers over well because those are a lot of things that um, are missing from a lot of people. I think that the tide is turning. More techies are now understanding like they have to engage in those types of things, but it is a great way to help you stand out. Also, sales. Sales is a really good one, particularly tech sales. So I'd say take an assessment of what your current skills are, and then work with someone, reach out to someone on LinkedIn or Twitter to just say, hey, here are the skills I currently have. How can I now flip them and market them, make them marketable for a tech role? And the next question is, would you recommend finding a niche when developing a brand, or is it acceptable to engage in any content that is of interest? I think it's fine to engage in the content that is of interest to you, and then from there, niche down. So when I got started, I pretty much focused on all aspects of network engineering. And I was transparent in my journey of finding my niche. I didn't really know what I wanted to focus on. So I would just, share content on, like VoIP or like a little bit of security. And as I was finding my way, like, hey guys, I tried this, I learned this. I didn't really like it. I'm moving on to something else. And so I think that's perfectly fine. All right, let's see. Okay. What is your take on using YouTube for visibility versus, say, a website blog? I see this question a lot, and I know it's based on more of what you're comfortable with, but I would love your point of view. It's definitely what you're comfortable with. I have held off on starting a YouTube because I just wasn't comfortable with showing up on video. It took me a while to get to this point, but just writing was just more comfortable for me. I know people who do like doing video because they're people who prefer to teach by demonstrating, if that makes sense, versus other people who, like me, I like to teach by writing. That's what's easiest for me. That's my comfort zone, my zone of genius, whatever you want to call it. And then I know people who just prefer to speak. So, podcasters, that's also a great way. So I say just start out with what's more comfortable. There's no mandatory way to start. You can take, I know people who have started off on YouTube and then they take their outlines for their YouTube video and then make a blog out of it. So you can definitely, repurpose that content over time as you expand and grow your platform. Right. Um, so the next question is, I wanted to know how I can start building my brand as a technical consultant. For a long time, I wanted to share my journey, but I just don't know how to. So I'd say for that, another easy win is again, sharing what you're learning, but also share what problems you're solving. So as you're doing consulting work and, within reasons, because I know there are some places that do like NDAs and stuff, but share what problems you're solving and how you went about it and what your thought process was to solve it. Why did you choose product A over product B? Um, why did you, if you started down one road, let's say, I started from a networking perspective, I started to implement this particular technical solution, but as I was designing it, I realized I really needed to do technical solution B. Sharing that type of content to show like, your expertise as a consultant and go from there. And that's also a way that you can, build trust with your future customers because they're seeing your thought process. They're seeing you, admit like, you know what, initially I thought product A would be a better solution, but as I got into it, I figured out that product B was actually the solution they needed. And you can add in, why that is, what changed about customer requirements, et cetera, et cetera. Next, we have, would you recommend sharing our social platforms or content with potential employers? So another great benefit of personal branding is you choose how you show up online. So if someone were to Google you, and as quiet as this kept, all employers do this. If they were to Google you, they're going to see, what you've put out there, be that a Twitter, a YouTube, whatever. So they're going to see it anyway. I personally don't share it or didn't share it. I think now I've gotten to the point where people, they kind of connect the dots so they know. um, but initially I didn't. However, it is all linked to my LinkedIn account. So if someone was on my LinkedIn page, they could then find my blog and my Twitter. So I really think it's up to you with how comfortable you are. I didn't at first because I was kind of nervous about it and I wasn't 100% confident in what I was sharing. But as you know, if I was hired or if the hiring manager did research, they're like, oh, yeah, I see like you have a blog and I see like you do, these podcast interviews. Like, this is really cool. This is really great. And it ended up just being, positive points for me. So you can link it all to your LinkedIn or you can even like just spell it out on your resume. Okay, I think that's all the questions. Ah, um, let me just make sure. So someone asked, what if you've kind of been doing everything, but now you're interested in podcasting? Go right ahead and start podcasting and then share your podcast on your other platforms that you've started. Again, it's really big to like repurpose content. So some people they'll just have their primary platform, whether that's a blog or a YouTube or a podcast, and then they'll just take, the outline for that content and just turn it into content somewhere else. So example for me, my primary platform is my blog. I will take my blog posts after a while and then break them down into threads on Twitter or break them down into carousels on Instagram. Next year, with me now finally tapping into YouTube, I'll take some of those blog posts and just use them as outlines for my videos. So you can take that content on one and then break it down and post it on others if your focus is to just expand your platform across mediums. So yeah, I'd say if you've been blogging and now you want to transition into podcasting, a easy win, go through your old blog posts, pick stuff, and turn it into podcast episodes. And even, if you want to get into like interviewing people, bring in people, to be guests to talk about this stuff. So you already have a foundation built. You just now need to figure out how you want to expand it. All right, it is 11:40. Um, does anyone have any other questions or feedback? All right. Someone asked me how I'm doing. I'm nervous. This is my first talk, and thank you so much, TextGiving, for selecting me. I'm really honored to be here. But other than that, I'm really good. It's Friday. We have decent weather here in Baltimore, so I'm looking forward to knocking out some work tasks and then getting my weekend started. So thank you, everyone. All right, I'm gonna just go ahead and close it down. So thank you again to everyone who attended the session. Um, Thank you to TextGiving for having me. And if you want to connect with me, I'm across all social media platforms at CCIE by the number 30. I am most active on Twitter. Please feel free to, DM me if you have any questions. My DMs are open. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, TextGiving. Have a good day and enjoy the rest of the conference.